Celeste is charming, it's flashy, it's clear, it's simplistic and stylish, and it's taking the evolution from its 4-bit prototype on the virtual Pico 8 console to an HD 2D kind of style with rich, colorful pixels. The game is packed with charming visuals, cutscenes, and characters, and for gameplay, you really get a lot of feedback immediately for your actions. This ranges from the main mechanic idea of Madeline's hair color being a tell of whether or not your dash is ready, up to those little bits of game-feel juice boxes sprinkled after a collectible or a dash. For core gameplay, you have 3 mechanics: left and right movement, an 8-directional dash you can perform as long as your hair is in blue, and a climb that can go a fair while before all you can do is wall jump or dash to safety. The game is an open field of levels that you can approach in a very varying order within the areas themselves, and extra playthroughs of areas are encouraged by a speedrun timer and completion. You also find these strawberries, but they're mostly to show off. The only required goal of each level is getting to the end to find the next level. I have much more to talk about in detail about every single one of those aspects, but we'll get to those after I address something. You can't always fill all of your good game with juice. Juice is served after eating something to let it all sink down and sit well in your tummy, but you can't just eat juice for lunch. Celeste does suffer at many points from this kind of oversaturation of glare, and I'll start with the biggest flaw. To get this over with, I'll just drop the TM bomb now and meme this review for the next 20 minutes or so. If this video magically got outsider attention, and it's not just my usual 13 viewers, you might not know The End is Nigh. So it is a platformer by Edmund Macmillan which revolves around Ash, this blob guy, traveling across the remains of the apocalypse looking for a friend. Levels work as an interconnected world with some worlds even intertwining into each other to create some really fun moments. Almost every single level has this optional tumor collectible, and you had to exit the level completely through any exit it may have to actually register it in and add it into your save. Occasionally you'll find some hidden levels and areas, and their prize is either a mega tumor rewarding you with 5 instead of the usual 1 tumor, or a cartridge, which is a new set of levels in the same theme of the world they were found in, and are much harder and have life restrictions. After the first half of the game, spoilers, the world gets destroyed again, kind of, and from where you started the game in your house, you go through the first 3 worlds again, but they are now completely reworked to a harder difficulty state, and just to add some stress, all tumors you collected so far are now served as live, where if you run out of them during a war before reaching the next one, you're toast. That is true up until the final world that you also pass through twice, once as your goal and once as escaping from it. There's another optional, super hard and restrictive final most world once you get every single collectible so far, and yeah, that's the end design in a nutshell. There are many extra things to try and get, like fully achieving everything in the cards or finding the extra NPC areas for your own fun. But the flow of the 2 games, Celeste and The End is Nigh, is very similar. It's a semi-open platforming environment with plenty of secrets for the looking eye, mainly 1 or 2 abilities for the player, yet varied ways to use those abilities around the game's world. Mainly optional collectibles along most of the levels that all require you to not just touch it like in VVV or many Mario games where if you die the collectible is still stored, but instead forcing you to deal with backtracking or pushing onwards with wherever the collectible was. But there's a big problem with Celeste, and the first one I want to point out is the graphics just don't provide you with enough information for quick reactions when combined with stuff like the screen shake, which I'm gonna address in a bit. The pixels are making a constant illusion that the space is very set and restricted to some grid, but in reality you feel loose and unready to time things. This is why I brought up The End is Nigh. It uses uncompressed vectors on all of its assets, and that gives the player a seamless, natural image of where everything is: borders, pixels, shading correctly, variants, palettes, idle animations. All these things are packed into the 2D HD world of Celeste in order to make it absolutely stunning to stop and breathe in the mountain's views, and how detailed was everything, but it starts working against you at times in actual moment-to-moment gameplay. I don't know if this is something the developers can really just fix with a patch, but I know Assist allows for some crazy time slowdowns, but at the time of writing this, I've yet to use it, and at least to my advantage, I just don't think it's good. I did start a save that uses it, and it's just like, Okay, I see why some people might want to resort to it. Watch GMTK's video on developer intentions and protecting players to learn more from one of the two cards that popped up during this long ass sentence. Nice. Continuing on overflowing your game with juice, look at Enter the Gungeon, another game that I think heavily suffers from this balance of a very nice core gameplay that was dumbed down in my opinion for the sake of designing it around 2E HD and adding too much polish everywhere. This is a bullet hell game, so when you get hit, it's good to notice that what hit you and stop everything for a split second while you can focus back on the character's general surroundings and not what you were shooting at. On the other hand of the juice scale is Screen Shake, which also spams through Gungeon like a kid is constantly shaking Isaac's box, I think. Celeste has both of these in a platformer, and if there's one thing I learned from the escape sequence of The End Is Nigh is that platformers should never, I mean never, have constant or frequent screen shake. And again, while you can't turn this off in Celeste's menu, the developers did clearly make this as the core way to play, and the toggle is meant for accessibility options. In the core way to play Celeste, the screen shakes every single time you use your main ability to dash. This may not look too disruptive while I'm doing it on ground level or doing it once, but in many cases in the late game where I had to do something soon after a dash, I ended up struggling with the landing, which I think is where the problem with the art style is really at its worst. If the screen shake wasn't part of the intended experience, I am certain I'd be able to accept the visuals a lot more, and not just have a bad feeling of forced retro in my stomach the whole time. The screen shake isn't only a problem when it's applied on the dash though, pretty much the same exact effect, also the rumble, but please never turn that on if you're playing on Switch, is visible when touching almost any object in the game. This is a big issue that took a lot of the fun out of the very good design for enemies and obstacles, which I'll cover in part 3 that discusses level design and collectibles. While Celeste definitely has good controls on surface level, I think there are some core aspects to it that either could have been improved greatly if they were noticed early in development, and some issues that I think very much could have been fixed along development or really can be fixed in the future, but games really don't update controls on patches, do they? Anyway, easily the worst main aspect is turning. There's a mass delay when, well, not mass, but very noticeable I think, when you change directions, especially mid-air, and that might be something to help the sensitivity of your dash and make it more meaningful, but there's more than a handful of times in Celeste where I felt forced to start turning at a very unnatural time for a platformer to get through an obstacle. This is a big fan, and it really was a fun killer whenever it popped up. The other issue I have is speed. Now, this may sound dumb, but in my Odyssey Possible Issues video that came out like, what, a couple days before Odyssey, and in retrospect, it's pretty funny to think I even did. Player speed in a platform is something a player is in constant use and relationship with. If there's one thing you can't just alter against the player out of nowhere, it's his speed, and in platformers like the 2D Mario games, Super Meat Boy, and Cluster Truck, you basically never leave the sprint button. And I'm not talking about abilities that alter speed like sprint boots, speed ups, or, you know, dashing. The player's speed isn't something you mess with, it's holy once it's in place. And Celeste does this wrong in two areas, wind and boss enemies. There's two boss enemies in Celeste that work in a very fitting way for a platformer. They chase you, forcing you to be constantly moving and not towards them. And I think the two fights are very good, and while there's one I'm hoping not to spoil here, the second one, which is more of a puzzle gauntlet, suffered less from a big issue with slowdown. Whenever the boss's chasing attacks gets too close, time slows down and grays out near the player, giving you, in theory, time to think about it. In reality, this is a very restrictive and hand-holdy feature that forces players who do work aggressively against the boss, like I tried doing, trying to hop on their head can stop their attack. That just forces them to expected speed change whenever they even try and purposely land a trick on the boss, making them feel at risk and as if a mistake was made even if they planned the dodge in advance. A similar issue is in my least favorite area, Golden Ridge's wind mechanic. The wind itself seemed like it wouldn't be much of a change from any other moving force so far, like, I don't know, the traffic blocks, but the game had a thing for changing the wind's direction for every screen. This felt like the game was at a slope against me at every turn. I had to rethink how the game works in a bad way, and the worst moments were when the wind just stopped on occasion, with no real explanation as to why. This was incredibly frustrating and was just a sluggish crawl through a game that, on every other turn, other than the Golden Ridge, was a very brisk and immediate experience. Except for when I tried to turn. But on everything else, I can't deny Celeste controls incredibly well and immediately. Aside from those issues with slowdown and turning, every death really did feel like my fault and an opportunity for me to improve. It was a real love-hate relationship with changing dash directions mid-air, but it never got to a point where I felt like it wasn't responsive. It was always just, yeah, my brain just isn't thinking fast enough. The story is very touching and impressive. If there's one thing this game does incredibly well more than anything, it's emotions and storytelling. You meet all these characters along the way. From the Gravity Falls ghost store clerk, who's so anxious about anything in his business going wrong that his own ghastly fears that are what draws customers away, filling it and contaminating the floors and the walls. All the way to Dandara, your fellow adventurer that will always keep a smile and a strong spirit no matter how dire the situation is. I don't want to spoil any of it here, but the main conflict presented here is mind-blowing. The antagonist is such a mesmerizing character, and their interaction with Madeline are something a normal, moral enemy can't do. No pun intended. The game also knows how to space out dialogue and gameplay very well. I never got to a dialogue point and thought, okay, stop, let me play again. It was always after a fair amount of challenges. The way the game tackles issues like self-doubt, confidence, regret, persistency, and most obviously panic attacks and anxiety is a subject always emotional to everyone these days, and I love the part where it even talks about a suitable coping mechanism for real life. All characters featured have something more to them than just the semi-sidekick, the mom, the elder, and the villain. They're all their very own personalities with characters and dialogue that varies here and there depending on stuff like previous encounters and dialogue choices. I highly appreciate its simple skip cutscene button too, and its location in the pause menu and not only option is very refreshing because usually it's either pausing cutscenes or skipping them, and this is a good balance. One nitpick is saying that the Animal Crossing Banjo-Kazooie voice blurs did make everything feel a bit less serious. I think the game could have done without any voice acting mimics at all. To jump back in, just for the sake of it, the end design has no characters, really. All you need to know about what the character feels is delivered during the 3 or 5 main cutscenes that happen when the game starts, when it massively shifts, and when it ends. Celeste drives the story and gameplay forward with actual characters I was looking forward to hearing more from and see what's next, while the end design only had itself to lure me forward. Up to you, the viewer, to decide if that's good or bad for each game. The music of Celeste is a miracle. It's not just instrument, it sounds like actual magic. Seriously, there are different notes being played, but the player is a mage and the sounds are perfectly spawned from thin air. Every single one of the melodies is captivating and emotionally driving you forward. Each track is also adaptive and changes not for only simple stuff like ground and water, but also to subtly change the atmosphere within the world as you progress, from mystery to then anger, and then guilt, and then fear, all while seemingly not changing the track. The background art is also something very worth noting. And while Golden Ridge was my least enjoyable level, I still know it had tremendous background art and visuals, and honorable mention has to go to the chasing you all night long with the background slowly showing the sun rising up on Celeste Mountain. Good touch. And speaking of good touches, I'll add this in this part just for real no good reason, but the in-game timer of Celeste, the friendly cutscene skip option, and the best run on your journal is an awesome addition, and it even comes with a separate listing for 100% runs and doesn't just use the pause menu on completed worlds to tell you how many collectibles you found already, but also how many you found again, making replays from used saves submittable to IL leaderboards without having to run through the entire game. This is a great bonus for a large amount of people that, if stuff like this isn't in, sometimes have to go through long minutes and do stuff like run the game in Korean because letters are smaller so you can mash dialogue quicker. Speedrunning accessibility and ease goes a long way towards establishing your game will have some kind of loving community following for a long time, and I love this. My favorite thing about Celeste is its innovations. As I mentioned back in my VVV review, that you can click the card to watch that too, 2D platformers have to work hard to be really innovative. So Celeste, while not only having a very direct and controlled set of abilities that don't exactly evolve over time, if you got to the end, what you're thinking of can be done with other in-game object, and was done clearly as a homage to the prototype and full story. Anyway, the game uses a mass amount of varied and unique objects, platforms, and tools that the player can learn quickly how they work, but the learning curve of each one is rich and detailed, and the worlds themselves are so long. Seriously, it always shocked me for how long each chapter lasts while still being innovative using its mechanics, so every single nuance of each thing gets all of its well-deserved time. And if that didn't feel like enough, check again, because there are still the B-side levels. There are unlockable level packs that you can find in each world, and they are insanity. Seriously, they take everything you know about each mechanic in the level and take you for a gauntlet of 500 tricks in quick succession. But all those mechanics, from the simple traffic light blocks through the blue bubbles that force a single dash after a really short time, to my favorites, the pinball bumpers, there's thought, care, and polish put into every one of the many aspects each world brings, all fitting the very creative worlds they belong in, such as clouds and pink clouds used as trampolines in the giant cliff sides, or these swamp fellas hanging in the stone depths of the mountain's feet. Of all these, my favorite world was this ancient mirror temple, where the game dramatically shifts the tone of the story, but the mechanics are all surrounding it and complementing each other. From the red soda bubbles to doors with switches, kind of maybe representing your mind, locking you into place. Over to this segment that lets you play as this jellyfish enemy, teaching you it can break these blocks yet never pass through these lights. Both lessons being important for very soon after, where this exact monster is chasing you down, and you use those exact lessons you experience yourself against it. Another analogy to self-conflict, All these elements join together to make a memorable, wonderful experience that you create for yourself thanks to the very open nature of the level structure. The other thing Celeste does wonderfully well, much better than the End is Night ever got me to feel about it, is post-game content. The End is Night main campaign is much longer, but it is more linear and straightforward compared to the open nature of Celeste. Both games have clear menu tells on where and when did you miss a level's collectible, but Celeste is much more approachable due to its way of separating the world into acts according to the story, and using that as an excuse to let you start at specific general key points in the level. The End is Night is just a lot less, like, the casual player is really unmotivated to try and get stuff they miss because they have to beat every single other level before you're trying to reach what you're trying to get. And that can be quite a setback for many when seeing that they have to beat 19 levels for one thing at the end. Celeste is yet again more approachable, and it's another thing I noticed is Celeste uses cartridges and the other uses cassettes, just a small detail. Anyway, the Celeste B-sides are, as previously mentioned, incredibly difficult gauntlets, but comparing those to the extra level packs you get in the End is Night, that those are truly evil. They laugh in your face when you die, they have life systems, and you can just breeze through them and make mistakes in every level. You have to think about the whole thing, and it doesn't really flow with the rest of the game. The cruelty takes another step when the biggest gauntlets make you go through all other levels again, all with one singular life system as one chain, and Celeste is just still relaxed. You can take breathers, there's in-map checkpoints before beating these, so you can still exit the chapter and do some other completion stuff before coming back. This is a good thing. Levels are still ball-strangingly hard, but the game isn't cruel about these. It's a learning experience, and at the end lies when TAN offers a skull, Celeste gives you a heart. Oh, and these hearts are cool. You get red hearts mainly by completing the cassettes, and these blue hearts by solving riddles placed around the game world in top secret crevices. These may not be as ARG level of cipher stuff like the heart cubes in Fez, which I still can't understand how some people ever figured out how to solve, but more tame, reasonable riddles that even I, a stupid, could get through many of without a walkthrough, which I'm very proud of. Both of these methods are great post-game extras that all add up towards this secret extra hard world that's presented to you after the credits, the core, my second favorite word of the game, for how it really goes all in with the game's mentality of changing what you think about the world in a split second. Strawberries they're crazy to me. I have no idea why or what motivated me to get these post-game, but while I was playing, I was expecting to write about how the strawberries fell flat and were disappointing because of how the game instantly points out they are purely for the sake of just getting them. And yeah, I know it alters the ending a bit, but still, this made me just not feel motivated to get these before I beat the game. They felt like challenges I just didn't want to best with my current skill and didn't think I'll ever bother coming back for, but yet there I was. I went back and got them. Most of them. Something about how the game ended got me such a rush of pride and sense of self-accomplishment. I was so motivated to go back and using the, again, lovely act-based system and get almost all 175 base strawberries. It felt good. The game just made me love this process of learning and beating something over time during its time on my hands. I couldn't stop. I went back sometimes with a guide and found more rooms and more secrets I skipped initially, seeing even newer ways to use and think about mechanics, and the game just really never stops. There is so much content just packed into this 18-euro beast that I can't say it's not worth it, even with the many flaws. I only told myself, this is it. I don't think I need to do anything else to feel like I experienced all this game has to offer for a review. Once I beat 4 of the 7 B-sides I needed to unlock the final post-ending B-side. And as I've looked up, the C-sides, which are probably just a short for suicide levels, unlock after beating the final B-side, meaning, yes, I have not experienced or seen footage of an entire difficulty level this game has, and I hope that isn't much of a difference from B-side, but hey, just know, this critique wasn't about the entire game. This isn't a review, because regardless of all the problems, I think that this game is worth your money. This is a critique, just thoughts. It's meant to improve it and tell you what I liked and what I didn't, and it was long. My throat is kinda sore and the voice clips are not all from one session, it is from one day though. In the description there's an unlisted stream of me I did on Instagram of the entire writing process. And yeah, this is my longest video since the Shovel Knight trilogy, and I'm incredibly proud of what I made here. As usual, I produce content based on what I myself watch, and channels like Joseph Anderson and Matthew Matosis, and their sometimes hour-long videos, are what I watched recently, and it really motivated me to really delve deep into a game and see what I can actually give it credit for a longer time than usual. I hope that this was a good watch. It was very, very fun to write, and if you want the script, a paste bin is available in the description, along with sources for all outside footage. Thank you so much for being patient and last week with no uploads and watching the video up until here, and yeah, I'm Boogs. Goodbye.